Hey, it's Adam with Tech Dive AV Club. We're in Vegas Pro 19 again, and today we're going to talk about every single thing about render options. Now, I do want to be clear, this video is going to cover the options around rendering. So these options. There will be another video. I've got an old one, but there needs to be a new one. Another video that goes through each and every format and template and codec, what they're for, what they're used for, and how to set them up and what customizing does there. But this video in particular, we're going to cover just all of the additional options and how they work. When you render a video, it will try, if you don't have any other options selected with just the default options, it will try to render the entire thing. So if you don't have an in and out set, I'll show you. If we go to render as, and you go to these render options here, if you do not have render loop region only checked, what it will do is it will try to render this entire project, and it'll render the black too. So it'll render the black at the beginning, it'll render the black here. Well, that's not black, that's just a layer you can't see. It'll render the beginning, it'll render right here, and it may even render further out too, depending on if it's confused about where the ending is. So that's not an ideal way to render. What you want to do before you render any video, and this is why we're starting here, is you drag your mouse up here to create an in and out point with the loop region. And this, you can snap it to the beginning and end of every video. When you scroll in with your mouse wheel, you can see if it is exactly on frame. If you're rendering audio and you don't have certain settings selected, which we've talked about in a different video, that might not be the case, but you can make sure that you don't have, sometimes you might have a problem like this to where you snap it to 1 and then you scroll out and it looks like it's snapped correctly. Vegas does a pretty good job of trying to show you where it's snapping, right? But perhaps you didn't notice. It's always good to kind of scroll in and make sure that you are exactly dead on with both items or all layers that you want ending at the same time. So now we've got our loop region selected. This is my previous tutorial here. We're going to go File. We're going to go to Render As, and then here is where all the render options are. So we're going to continue to talk about these since we've already started in this box here. So we've got render loop region only selected. I highly recommend this is always being selected. So stretch video to fill output frame size. Do not letterbox. What that will do, let's say you have a video that looks like this, and you have some what's called letterboxing, and you want to render something out to 16 by 9, but for some reason it doesn't stretch. Now, this may not be the case with this hard letterboxing here, because I've put this letterboxing in. If the source video itself doesn't have, it is letterbox, like it's not fitting the project settings you have. So again, we'll have another video about project settings. But if it's not fitting your pixel size, so this would be 1920 by 1080p, just a standard high-def video, and you had a video that was just too long, it was a longer video, like a panoramic style video, you might have an issue here. And if you select that, what you could do is it could stretch to fill instead. That would be fine depending on what you're looking for. You might want that, you might not. For this, that would make the video look wonky, but that is exactly what that option would do. Again, if you have a video its source video itself, not manually cut, but its source video itself is letterboxed. So this helped me before with this shot right here. I've got it. This Michael J. Fox shot. The pixel ratios were slightly different because of the codec it was when I ripped it. By the way, there's actually a Vegas program projected onto this, so it's supposed to look like a projector that he's riding over a Vegas program. So fun fact there. So in this shot right here, Michael J. Fox, I'm cut to be behind Michael J. Fox. The problem is this video had slightly different pixel sizes than this video. And so after I would render, the masking would be off and it wouldn't look right. So a way I fixed that was I went to render options, and then for that particular video I stretched the video to fill the output frame, And what that did is it stretched the pixels to match. So both source files match. So if you have like a pixel size mismatch, that may help you. Use project output rotational settings. So here's your output rotation right here in your project properties. This is saying that it would use this to make a decision. Right now I have it original, but if you wanted it flipped or whatever, trying to flip your video, make sure it renders correctly, you can, in your render as settings, make sure that your project output rotational setting is what's being used to make sure the video is right side up. Save project markers in the rendered media file. I believe this would only work with certain types of codecs. So take this one with a grain of salt. The save project as path referenced in rendered media file. This would be overriding the original. So if you had a video and you rendered it out again, you could make it overwrite the original. That may be a good idea, may not be a good idea. That would be a good space saver. It's usually something I would stay away from, but it is an option. Save loudness log to file next to media file is also something you could do if your codec or presentation source supports this. Enable multi-channel mapping. This would be if you had 5.1 surround sound selected. So for our sound, if you go to audio, we have stereo, but let's go and apply 5.1 surround sound. Now if you go to render options, render as, render options. So you'll notice enable multi-channel mapping is still off even after enabling 5.1 surround sound. That's because for this to be enabled, you need to actually do a codec that accepts it. And audio interchange file format, or an AIFF, is one of those file formats that will accept it. So you'll see that enable multi-channel mapping is on. So what this does, if you render your audio as one track, but you have multiple channels on that track, this is how you would do that. Now in MXF, AVI or WAV format is what you need to have a single audio file, but have multiple channels on that file. So that would be what you need to enable multi-channel mapping. When you create video proxies and you use the create proxy button, what a proxy is covered in more detail in another video, but as it says here, video proxy is being built. You can cancel this operation by clicking cancel button on the left side of your status bar. Creating a video proxy for certain files compresses media formats and dramatically increases speed and performance. When you do that through Vegas, I'm going to cancel the operation down here in the corner. When you do that through Vegas, it will automatically swap the video files back when you render out, and I'm going to talk about that more in a second. When you render your video, it will automatically render with your original videos, not your proxies. However, let's say that you input a bunch of videos in here, and you want to swap the video files before you render, like as you render. If you click this button and then hit render, you'll see it says browse to the folder that holds the file that you want to swap in the files for your project media window. The files in this folder replace any file in your project with the same name, regardless of file extension. So let's do this right now. All right, so let's name another intro. Let's name another video, new intro 2.0, and see what happens if I select that file. So what I'm going to do, I've got an old thing with me on a green screen. I'm going to rename this. It has to be the exact same name, by the way. The exact same name. So rename to new intro 2.0. Whoops. All right. So now I know in this little old folder I have, this video has now the same name. So now when I go to File and Render As, and I render this section here, it should be the intro to my tutorial. But instead, when we hit this and we hit Render, what we're going to end up having is I get the ability to go into, so any video in this folder with the same name. So I know it's in this folder. So any video with this folder, I hit OK, and then I hit OK, because it found one video to replace. And look at that. It's actually swapped the time code and everything for this video at the beginning. So this is now rendering as my intro. I'm going to cancel this because I don't really want it to happen. But now that video has been swapped. I'm going to hit Control Z because I don't want that video to be swapped. But that is an alternate way to do video proxies, and it is an alternate way to do templates if you wanted to create some sort of a template. So we'll have a video more specifically about making templates in the future, but I just want you to know about that render option feature. So now these are a little easier. With the filter options, like I said, we're going to cover this more in particular in the formats section, but some of these are video formats, some of these are audio formats, but most of the video formats also include audio formats with them. Some do not. It just depends on the format. Like I said, we're going to cover that more in a later video. But here's where you select the format, which is going to be both the codec and the package that your video is in. So the codec is how it's compressed, and the package being the file type it's going to end up as. And so you select a format, and then you select a template for that format. So what a template is really, it's just settings for the format. So each of these formats can be changed to any setting. So let's go to a common one. AVC, AAC, extremely common. This 4K, here's the 2K version. These are kind of my typical render settings. But you can see here I have this one with a star by it. Why? Because I use it often. Very typical, and it matches my current render settings. So what you can do is you can actually go to show favorites only, and then it will show per format what your favorites are. So these are only formats that I have favorites inside of, and it shows all of the ones I have starred. So you get to see a little window into the kinds of things I typically render. All right, and then so if you hit match project settings only, it'll only find things which can similarly match your project settings. So it won't need necessarily the same codec, but what it's talking about, if you go to this little gear up here, this is where your project settings are. What it means is matching your project settings as far as pixels, interlacing versus progressive, things like that. So it will, if we go back to render as, only show ones that match those project settings you have selected. Not necessarily what your videos are down here, but what you told Vegas those settings are. Okay, you can select audio or video or both. You can select all these. You got to be careful. You might over select. So for the audio template only, if you select that, it'll only show you audio templates. For the video template only, it'll only show you video templates. These are just ones that will have video. Now, some of these do have audio in them, like the AAC, that's an audio codec. But this is a video template that will have a video first and audio second. Then you can match project audio channel count, depending on how many audio channels you're trying to render out with. You can match project audio sample rate. And that would be only give you templates which match the sample rate. And you're like, what's my sample rate? If you go up here to your gear, go to your audio, you can see the sample rate being selected right here. 48 kilohertz is DVD quality audio, pretty good light, what standard people render to. This matches the video frame rate that you have set in your project settings. Then this matches the video frame size. So well, this one matched everything, right? But these are the in particular things it can match. So frame size would mean it's 16 by 9, and frame rate would mean, so mine's 16 by 9, or 1920 by 1080p. But frame rate would be how many frames per second. Mine's 29.97, so it's showing me a bunch of 29.97 options here. Okay, so this, to not get these confused, frame size would be 1920 by 1080p. This would be the ratio, would be anything that's 16 by 9. So any pixel ratio which would end up 16 by 9 is the match pixel ratio. And then the match project video field order matches your interlacing settings. And if you don't know what interlacing is, you don't want to know. It's really just why video will render at different times at different lines. It's dying, but some people still need it. So here it is. So that is all of your filters. You can search to quickly find what you're looking for. Like if you're trying to get some FLAC audio, you can just search FLAC and you'll find it right there. This particularly searches through the formats. These are different templates, but you can customize each of these templates. So you can start with this and go to customize template, and each of these will have different options about what you can do, like your pixel aspect ratio, the exact profile, which means like how its codecing is going to make its underlying mathematical decisions about how to display pixels, your frame rate. You can go through and customize all of these and name it that and save it. And you'll see that with some of these, I have some things saved, like small internet video, how to make a really small video and things like that. That will be things covered in a later tutorial. But that is what the customize template button does. You can hit about here and it will tell you more about the format itself, where it comes from, what the copyright from it is, that jazz. You can, down here you get a folder. This is the folder that you can render your video to. And I have mine going to where I just have a lot of my tutorials and stuff going. But when I hit browse, you can see that was a failed experiment. When you hit browse, you can just browse and find a file that you want to save your videos to. Or you can just hit project location, which mine is the same. So let's say if I moved it to here, and then if I hit project location, it'll move it to where the project, this right here, your saved video project, Vegas project, it'll put it in the same folder that your project is located in. And then it's going to name it after the project with the file extension after it. If you delete the file extension, it will add it back. If you change something after the file extension, it will add it back. But this is your way to name it. You can name it whatever you want. If you hit cancel, it doesn't do anything. It stops the operation. If you hit render, it starts to render the audio based off your render options you selected here. So, with the exception of covering what these formats are, how they work, which this video is coming. It's going to be a big video, so I got to spend some time digging it out, showing you guys how this all works in here. But that is the overview, the basics of how the formats and templates work and what all of your render options to do with that are. Now there's one more thing that you might not be realizing. With rendering, you can actually render out as photos. And so in your render options, we're going to cover this more later, but with the image sequence, you can render out as photos, which will render out every frame as a photo of your choice, photo format of your choice. But here, that's a very interesting frame to cut on. So if you hit Vegas image, if you have the Vegas post suite, this will open up the snapshot of that. It'll render out that frame and put it into a Vegas image project and then automatically replace that file with whatever you've edited in Vegas image. If you hit saved snapshot the file, it creates a picture of whatever name you saved it as. And so you see it popped up right here. Now I can drag that into the file as a picture. So that's a quicker way to do this one if you don't have Vegas image, but this lets you start editing it as a photo in your photo editor. So that's cool stuff there. But that is technically a way to render something out of Vegas, so I wanted to cover it. One of the last things is you do have to pay attention. If you want a 360 video, you will need 360 output selected, and then when you go to render as, you will have options that support 360 output. And then very, very interesting to look at this as if it was wrapped around like a 3D video. Okay, so the next thing is if you go to your options, the next thing, if you go to tools, you can go to your scripting here. And one of the canned scripts, you can add as many scripts as you want. One of the canned scripts that Vegas sends you is batch rendering. Now, I have a video that goes way more in detail into batch rendering. So if you want more info about that, please watch my batch rendering video. But because this is a render option, I wanted to do it. You can render the whole project, but you really want to do is render selection or render regions. I have no regions created. Again, that's covered in my other video, but you can render the selection you have, and you can select all the different formats you want it in. So you can select more than one format. You can select more than one template for the format. If you already have a template made that you want, it will not show up here. This is only the default templates you get. However, the default templates are a breadth of options, so you get a lot of options here. You can create the base file name, and then the rest of it afterwards will be numbers. So you can render the same project out over and over again as a bunch of different formats, or you can render the different regions out as a bunch of different formats and a bunch of different versions, and you can just do it all at once. You hit the button once and you walk away. More important when computers took even longer to render than they do, but it can still take a long time, so this is a great and handy tool. I use it when I'm making about 10 videos at a time when the software comes out and I have a lot to cover. So that is render options for Vegas Pro 19. I want to reiterate, this is not a video about codec selection. That video is coming. This video is about render options. Thanks so much for watching. Like this video helped you out. Subscribe if you're looking for more videos like this.